I could feel the cold wind slipping through the cracks of the window, biting at my skin. It was late, almost midnight, but I was still wide awake. I stared at my phone, waiting for her to respond to the message I had sent hours ago, but there was nothing. Just silence. Lately that was all there ever was, silence between us. I kept telling myself it was just a phase, that couples go through these moments, but deep down I felt something shifting. Something wasn't right. We had been together for almost 5 years. We met in Rome while I was on a work trip. I was sitting in a cafe pretending to read a book, but really just people watching, and there she was, just passing by. I remember she smiled at me, and it felt like the world stopped for a second. We ended up talking, walking the streets until the sun began to rise. It was one of those moments that made you believe in something bigger. But now, looking at the dark screen of my phone, that moment felt so far away. She had been distant for weeks. At first it was small things, like how she would avoid holding my hand in public, or how she would say she was too tired to meet up. I thought maybe it was work. She had been complaining about her boss a lot, how stressful it had been at the office. But then she stopped being affectionate altogether. One night I tried to kiss her, and she pulled away. She looked at me, almost apologetic, and said, "I just don't feel like it anymore." Those words cut deeper than I realized at the time. I remember that night well. I lay in bed next to her, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I had done wrong. Was it something I said? Did I stop paying enough attention? I went over every conversation, every argument, trying to figure it out. But there was no answer. A week later, I started noticing the changes more clearly. She would mention an old friend from college, someone named Lucas. At first, it was casual, in passing, like, "Oh, Lucas texted me today." I did not think much of it. I trusted her. But soon, his name kept coming up in almost every conversation. "Lucas is so funny," she would say. "Lucas really understands what I'm going through." It was strange how often she brought him up. I asked her if she wanted to meet him for coffee sometime, thinking that would make her happy. She hesitated before saying, "Yeah, maybe. I don't know." Her response felt odd, but I ignored it. I wanted to believe that I was being paranoid. She had never given me any reason not to trust her. But then one night, everything changed. I was sitting on the couch, waiting for her to come home from work. She had been staying late more often than usual. I did not want to be the jealous boyfriend who questioned her every move, but the thought was there, gnawing at me. Was she really working late? I tried to push it out of my mind. When she finally walked through the door, she seemed distracted. She barely said a word to me, just went straight to the shower. I sat there, watching her, trying to make sense of it all. Something in her eyes was different, something distant. My heart started racing, and I could feel the panic rising in my chest. After she went to bed, I decided to ask her. I had to know. I walked into the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and quietly asked, "Are you seeing someone else?" She turned to face me, her eyes wide with surprise, but then her expression changed. She looked almost defensive. "What? No. Why would you even ask that?" I felt my stomach twist. "You've been distant lately, and you keep talking about Lucas." She sighed, rolling her eyes. "You're being ridiculous. He's just a friend. You know I would never do that." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the way she said it, the way her voice wavered just slightly, it left me with doubts. We argued for a bit, but I dropped it eventually. I didn't want to push her away even more. That night, I could barely sleep. My mind kept racing, imagining all the worst possible scenarios. Was she with him? Was she lying to me? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together, laughing, holding hands, kissing. It was torture. The next day, I did something I never thought I would do. I went through her phone. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't stop. I needed to know. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through her messages, my heart pounding in my chest. And then I saw it. A message from Lucas. I don't know what I expected to find, but there it was. "I can't wait to see you again," he had written. My breath caught in my throat. I felt like the floor had been pulled out from under me. My whole world shattered in that moment. She had been lying to me. I sat there, staring at the screen, trying to make sense of it. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this? We had been through so much together. I thought we were happy, but clearly I was wrong. I didn't confront her right away. I couldn't. I didn't know how. I spent the next few days pretending like everything was normal, but inside, I was breaking. Every time she smiled at me, every time she kissed me goodbye, it felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. One night, as we were sitting at the dinner table, I looked at her and said, "I know." She froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "What do you mean?" I swallowed hard, my hands shaking. "I know about Lucas. I saw the messages." Her face went pale. For a moment she didn't say anything, just stared at me in shock. Then finally, she spoke. "I'm sorry." Those two words felt like a punch to the gut. I had been hoping, praying that she would deny it, that it was all some misunderstanding. But it wasn't. She'd been cheating on me. I didn't know what to say. I just sat there, numb, staring at her. She started crying, trying to explain, saying it didn't mean anything, that it was a mistake. But I couldn't hear her. All I could think about was how everything we had built was falling apart. I left that night. I packed a bag and drove to a hotel, unable to stay in the apartment any longer. I needed space. I needed time to figure out what to do next. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I felt lost, like I was walking through a fog, unable to see the way forward. I kept thinking about the years we had spent together, the memories we had made. It felt like none of it mattered anymore. But eventually, I realized something. This wasn't just about her betrayal. It was about me too. I had to decide what I wanted, what I deserved. And in the end, I knew I couldn't stay with someone who had broken my trust, so I walked away. It wasn't easy. I still loved her despite everything, but I couldn't keep pretending that things could go back to the way they were. Trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. And I wasn't willing to live with that uncertainty hanging over us. Now as I sit here in this empty apartment, I wonder if I made the right choice. Maybe one day I will know. But for now, all I can do is move forward and hope that in time the pain will fade.